All right. Thanks everybody for joining us today. And I know we have some people still coming on. So Jerome and I thank you. I'm Cassie, by the way, and my partner there. You can talk. There is sign language,
Or
Jerome.
yes, hi, my name is Jerome, the partner.
So today we're going to talk about social learning. And I know this is defined in many, many ways, but what we'd like to do first is we like to do an icebreaker. And since it's just a small group and we have a lot of people on phone, if you guys want to do this, I'm going to ask you to put in chat where you're from, and you're going to tell us what is the one social thing that you miss from being at the workplace or being at work, or, you know, in general since the pandemic has happened. I know, Jerome, why don't you give your example?
All right. While everybody's typing in theirs, I remember distinctly during the midst of the beginning of the pandemic for us, one thing socially that I missed when going into the office was the office birthday. The cake from Safeway or Costco and the lame singing, but really just the getting together and enjoying each other's company, because at that time we didn't have that option anymore. So the things that we took for granted, like the Costco cake, like we couldn't celebrate that with everybody anymore. So I miss those. And now that we're returning back to, well, at least some of us are coming back to the office to work, I've I've been able to experience an office birthday and taste the Costco cake again, and it tastes good. So while we're still navigating this pandemic, it does feel good to have a little bit of that normalcy we used to have.
Nice. Looks like Tiffany misses seeing her coworkers. Wendy misses the potlucks and celebrations. Definitely miss that. But Wendy, have you noticed if you lost weight because no matter potlucks and you're not having to eat everything? Debbie said in-person workshops. Where those of you who are just joining, we're talking about put in where you're from and tell us what is one of the social things you miss about being in the workplace. And if you are in the workplace, what are some of the things that you enjoy too? Oh, Laura likes potlucks. Yeah, I love potlucks. Oh, wait, Wendy, what, Wendy? Oh, that's okay, Wendy. Maybe that's why potlucks were your weight, your fitness challenge wellness, right? That's what kept the weight down. For me, it's weird. I'm kind of one of your anomalies. I've kind of always been in this state, so I get to see both worlds. And I usually, if I don't talk to people, I force them to talk to me. Yeah, Jerome. And I gently force them. In other words, like I try to encourage, say like, "Hey, let's talk. How are you doing?" And try to make that connection. Yes, we can't bond over food, and we can't definitely do it. But I will say what I have done, and this is just me and my style. I actually said, "Hey, can I schedule a meeting with you with a couple of people?" And I actually sent DoorDash to them. And they go, "Hey, there's somebody at my door. Oh, by the way, I just sent you some DoorDash. Go answer the door." They got the food and we sat there and we ate together. So that was something different I tried. And the people who did that with me, and yes, I'm an extrovert, I tend to try to do something different because it's unexpected. The person's like surprised, and I try to kind of get an idea of what they want to eat. So, looking at, oh, Dina misses the conversations that happen before and after meetings. Christy, she misses, oh, you miss working from home. You're back in the office. Oh, shucks. You know what's so funny? You say that, and I know we're recording this, so TMI. I will say when I'm working from home, when I gotta go bathroom, oh, it's so quick, yeah, so you can hold it as long as you can. But when I'm at work, I got to plan, and then I end up doing like the dance when you're in some of the meeting. Sorry, TMI. Oh, Cheryl. Oh, Cheryl, wow, you're 100% from home. Wow. But you do miss the interaction. So I'm glad you could join us, get some interaction with us. That's great. And we have our Gen Zer joining us, who is our special guest, and he'll be talking shortly. And Kaleo, he is a Gen Zer. He is the COVID graduation class, the first COVID graduation class. So he's actually going to be talking a little later and sharing with us about what Gen Zers are looking for employers, and also what are they looking when it comes to learning and training and how to skill them up and the values. So let's go ahead and continue on here. So social learning, again, there are tons of definitions. There's the very book research type of definition where it's Bandura. But for this one, we're going to talk about sharing information with others in an indirect or non-direct or direct or indirect version of like digital means, because it can happen definitely different ways. Oh, Haley, the lunch conversations, yeah, those are always good, yeah, when you pass by and you're heating your food up. So for this purpose, social learning really can be defined, especially in the digital world we work in. We've all had to pivot, we've had to meet that change. And what's interesting is before the pandemic, we had so many instructions of like instructor-led sessions in person. We got to do workshops, we got to do potlucks and share food at the trainings. And it didn't require you to have your laptop there. Now we talk about post-pandemic, and now we're like virtual, and there are studies that are out there. It says 30 minutes after you finish the virtual training session, whether it's instructor led like this, or if they're taking an e-learning, most of them forget a lot of the material, and it depletes after 7 days, and it's very interesting as I started to do more research on it. So how do we create that social engagement? I will tell you, okay, on a raise of hand here, and you can put in the text area and you can chat this. How many of you kept up with your social media though? Like you're on your Facebook, or you saw Instagram, or you're perusing TikToks, It's funny. TikTok is the new social learning, the 3-minute social learning where you can get all your information. Oh, some people are social media ghosts. Yeah, that's Jerome. Yep. Oh, you use IG way more than you did before. Okay, Wendy Lee. Yep. So now when we talk about post-pandemic, how do we take those things that we gravitate toward and put it in a learning environment? How do we get learning to happen? And that tends to be the trickiest. And I talked to some of the organizations. I got to talk to Haley, I got to talk to Dina, and we're sharing some ideas of like, how does that happen? So Dina, do you mind if I like call on you for a second and talk a little bit about some of the things we talked about?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Yeah, so Cassie and I got to meet and we were just, chatting about what social learning means in different organizations. And for us, it's not necessarily as much, well, it is a digital experience because we're meeting through MS Teams. But one of our biggest challenge for new hires is we put them through a week of training and they go back into their work environment and then they struggle because there's not a lot of people helping them. Their officers are really busy, they don't have time, and escrow is a very complicated industry to learn. So we brought back this concept called the greenhouse. And we couldn't do it before because in person be way too expensive. But through MS Teams, we actually have two mentors that sit on a MS Teams channel all day. And it's pretty much like having a person in the cubicle next to you for EAs across the entire state, which is our escrow associates. And they can call in at any time. They can sit on the channel all day if they want. They can ask questions as they're working on their own live files. And it has really been a game changer for us. Not only can they learn from their mentors, but they also learn from each other. They're in that greenhouse for about 4 weeks. And then after 4 weeks, we put them into a modified version where they just come in the afternoon. And it's only if they need to. They also can use the chat on the channel if they don't want to join the call. So yeah, it's been really, really great. We've gotten good feedback on it.
Yeah, I really like that greenhouse concept. I mean, that was like genius, especially if you're trying to make sure that you keep that momentum going and you keep that engagement. Thank you, Dina. So
Yeah.
we're going to move into our first breakout, but I have 3 people who are on phone calls, and I want to make sure that I get you into the right room if you're on screen or if you're not on screen. So those 3 people who are on a phone call, if you can kind of just like give me a little text thing in the chat box and tell me, if you're on screen and who you are, then that way I can associate them. If not, you can always go back to your settings and reassociate it and put your name in there. But we're going to go to a breakout here. And while I'm waiting for those phone callers, and what I want to do is, what have you noticed change in your organization as a result of the pandemic and as it applies to learning? Okay. So I want to make sure that, we kind of understand what we're, and it can be anything, it doesn't have to be specific. You definitely can go ahead and just make sure, like, you can share any ideas you have, you can share any thoughts you have, and I'm going to get ready to put everybody in the breakouts. So I'm going to go ahead and send everyone to the breakouts. And if I miss someone's phone number, definitely go ahead and put it in the chat. Let me know, and I'll make sure you get into the correct room. We're going to spend about, let's do about 7 minutes in this area. And then we'll go ahead and send you folks, and we'll bring you back. And I'll open up the rooms.
Is Laurel the other phone?
Maybe I'll go ahead and assign her to the room she's at. I was waiting for Wendy Lee. She's just going to hang up and call in with her. So sorry, I should pause this.
First is like, oh, do you line up your own stuff ready to
You know,
go?
It's interesting. So I always try to make sure there's some kind of music, so that way you know when you're returning back to the room, when the session's starting, when the session's ending. It kind of like breaks that dead air, because a lot of times when we do training, it's like, and then you're like,
Yeah.
is it starting?
You know what's funny?
Uh-huh.
That I've done the same thing on my actual recording. So even asynchronous training, to just put a little intro music, but then like it's like at 1% level while you're doing all your voiceover recording and like watching, just to have that little bit of background, but like natural sound. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. Hope you folks had some great conversations. And I threw in Kaleo in one of those groups, so it will be interesting. Yay, Kaleo! I've known Kaleo since he was a freshman. His mom and I are best friends, so there's a little out there. Social learning actually is a just-in-time thing. And back when I got into private industry, and they said, oh yeah, no, we want to start doing videos. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, high school's been doing that. Because I came from education, and education, like, we're already doing videos for learning. We're already doing all those kind of creative things. And you come into private industry, you're like, wait, what? So it's very different. So my mind had to shift, and adult learners are sometimes not always welcoming to changes. And it takes you sometimes have the analytical perspective, where they go down the rabbit hole and they want to know how, what, when, why, where, how come. So social learning can happen in basic formats, right? We can talk about wikis, we can search for videos. Everybody does it now. YouTube it. Everybody Googles it, right? And that's the whole social learning aspect. But then how do we take that and we apply it to what we do in our work? One thing social learning does is it supports continuous learning. I will tell you, I am on TikTok. So my habit is TikTok at night. And I go and then I tag and save the videos that I want, that are really learning related. And then I put it all together as a little repository for myself, because if not, I forget where I tagged and who I tagged and where I saved it to. And I don't want to have to go back to it. Now, I will say I saw my nephew on it, and he's like, Auntie, what are you doing? You just click here and you go here and you can find all your, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm old. then I realized that point. But it does also support that collaboration, right? When you do social learning. What's interesting, Brandon Hall, everybody knows who Brandon Hall is, right? They do a lot of research out there. They talk about how companies, 60% of the companies want employees to interact with learning resources, access it, do this, do that. We always say, like, if we build it, they will come. But actually, when it happens, it actually doesn't happen. It's not quite a sustainable request it's like that leading that horse to water kind of situation. So I'm going to ask Haley, I know you're off camera, if you'll be okay with this. I wanted you to see if you're willing to share. Haley and I had a conversation as well about what they're doing at the Leo Kalani Trust, and they actually did some great things, and they had some real areas where they got to learn what worked and what were some challenges. So Haley, are you open to sharing? If not, don't worry.
Sure thing, Cass. I can share a little bit if I stay off camera. I hope that's okay.
That's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
No problem. So yes, as Cassie was mentioning, had some really great conversations, and a lot of it really was born out of the pandemic and really looking to have opportunities for our staff members to connect with one another through our workshops. And I think one of the really beautiful, positive things to come out of that was that craving for interaction and connection and still being grounded. It really drove a lot of folks to increase their participation at certain events, such as trainings where we intentionally integrated that time for them to talk to one another, help to lift up that internal expertise, and then just further strengthen that sense of respect that they had for what everyone is doing, even if we're not seeing it day to day. I think some of the challenges born out of that was just due to capacity. If we had breakout sessions, for example, just out of sheer numbers of people who wanted to attend, we couldn't always have a facilitator in each of those segments, which sometimes led to a little bit of blind leading the blind. And then I would say even further down the road, they got so inspired wanting to spark more of those group meetings on their own, which we love. It's empowering to them, where they can come together on their own time and continue that learning, but without kind of that structure or that guidance on how to facilitate. It may have resulted, I would say, in either some biased conversation, folks being left out of the process, and so sometimes it fizzles. So it was kind of this interesting journey of both channeling and bringing in that energy, but then also not managing it, but making sure that it's going forward in a productive way where folks are learning those skills that we really wanted to be gained through the organization, and also not perpetuating anything that would be either counter to that or harmful to culture and feeling.
Cool. Thanks, Haley, for sharing all that. And one of the things we talked about was I know some people think like technology is always the piece that needs to be included for social learning, but actually, even if you don't have the technology, you can still do this. You can still, I saw this one organization and they're very restrictive on their network, where they created a video and then they shared it out like in an email, and they got approval, it got reviewed, but the whole part of it was a 3-minute video to get people to understand this is the way you're going to log into your new portal for your payroll and your paychecks and all that kind of stuff. And it was very interesting because from there, people, the amount of questions they normally would have had, they didn't have as many, so just something simple like that. But what was funny was she said she got a lot of comments, and the people would respond, to the emails like, wow, that was great. I was so glad to see something rather than us just putting a whole bunch of text in an email. So that is a social learning piece as well. Because how many emails do we all have, right? Like, not like we don't have enough. Okay, so moving on. One thing it also does, and Haley had pointed out, is that it really embraces our culture, right? And it raises that level of supporting an employee, making them feel valued. I will say, millennials and Gen Zs, as we talked about before, they have a very different set of cultural values. Now, how that aligns to a company may not always match up. I know. Sorry, Christy, I'm gonna out you. So Christy and I, like, I've known Christy since she was younger. And definitely it's different, right, Christy? Like, how is it for you, your company culture versus like your values of culture?
Yeah, I personally think I'm pretty technology progressive. I used to be in IT. I have a computer science degree. So being in the company that I am in now, and we really like, a lot of times I can't even participate in these ATD events because those sites are blocked for me. It's very handcuffing. And a lot of times I try not to stress myself out, but it's super frustrating because I know what we can do versus what we're doing. And it's like such a fraction of the 100%.
Mhm. Yeah, and you're a Gen Zer?
I'm a millennial.
Oh, you're a millennial. All
Yeah.
right. Interesting. Okay. So let's hear from a Gen Zer then. And by all means, this is your time to ask questions. This is the workforce or the population that is taking over our workforce. A research study showed like 43% plus, and this study was only done in 2022, or 2020, ending of 2021, published in 2022. So it probably has changed, where we probably have 43% or more of Gen Zers flooding our marketplace. And of the marketplace, I think also millennials are included in that, but millennials actually make up more than 54% of our marketplace now. So I'm going to introduce Kaleo, and he's going to do his little sharing. And by all means, feel free to unmute yourself, or if you want to put a question in the chat. This is really a session for you because it's rare. We ask millennials if there are kids, or we ask millennials if there are employees, but you get a very different response. So feel free to go ahead and ask. Kaleo, I turn it over to you.
Thank you. Aloha, everybody. My name is Kaleo. So I'm just going to share a little bit about myself. I graduated in the middle of the pandemic, literally the worst time to ever graduate. It was a culture shock, total culture shock. And, after graduating, I kind of didn't know what the plan was. I mean, I was going to school. The plan was to go to New York City. I always wanted to move there and live there. But because of COVID, there was a lot of questions in play. And so I decided to stay home. And actually, I wanted to work as a Starbucks barista at first. And I had this huge, debacle with my mother about working there because of some other opportunities. And she just really wanted to push me despite, what was going on and the stress in the economy at the time. And so fortunately enough, I got a job at the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement as their intake specialist. And so it was really small when I first started, even though it was just 2 years ago. And it was basically a receptionist job, taking in calls and requests from outside and, passing that on to somebody else. And then I was fortunate enough to work myself up in the next couple of months to be the data manager for the council. And I got to put together the emergency financial assistance programs. I don't know if you folks heard of that, the COVID relief funds from the feds. So I got to put the application, the whole process together, implement training. From there, I got to do help with pop-up makeke and storage and warehouse data. I got to be in charge of the Native Hawaiian Convention and just so much more. So, and at the same time, my first year, I was full-time working and full-time going to school, which was crazy, and navigating this all through a pandemic. So it was crazy. Yeah. More recently, I'm getting my Salesforce certification. I'm on track to get it by the end of this month, which is really awesome. And I'm now working for the Purple Ma'i'a Foundation there as their business development specialist. So I'm really excited. Recently, I moved to New York City, totally on my own. But it was so worth it. It was so worth it. And it was really to just get a jump start on my career. And I think, honestly, the pandemic has shown me that, the importance of work-life balance and also the possibility to really do things without being being stuck in your house kind of thing. You can do so much without with just a phone in your pocket. And it's cool that, our generation has grown up with that, just super connector, a super computer in our pocket. And I think a lot of times other generations don't realize that. But yeah, I'm gonna just share a few more things about specifically training. And in my experience and having a leadership role at the council, the one thing that I found super important was really having accessible training on demand. and multiple forms of learning. You know, our generation, we're like Cassie has mentioned before, we swipe, you know, all night on TikTok and, you know, checking our email and news and podcasts and posts and everything. And I think the hardest thing for corporate companies or just organizations in general to take on the next generation of the workforce is keeping up with our attention span, because we do take in information so many different ways and so quickly. So, you know, at CNHA, I was fortunate enough to implement a self-service type of portal for our employees, where there's video content, there's, you know, SOPs with specific, you know, pictures and text, and, you know, highlighting here and circles there and everything, and just creating multiple ways for everybody to learn. And a lot of times, you know, during the pandemic especially, this work-life balance thing, I think, really became more of a conversation for people. And you know, connecting that to the on-demand training, you know, we want to be able to learn at any point we want to learn. You know what I mean? When we're ready to learn, we want to learn. If we need help, we want to learn. And so having someone or something ready available is just would be awesome. And that really takes me to my next thing, which was hands-on training. And I know Dina talked about the greenhouse engagement and how there's someone right there. Like I've never heard of that, but I was like, wow, if every company had that, I think, you know, they'd definitely be top notch, because, you know, someone's there who can help you answer your questions and then also fix your mistakes. You can fix your own mistakes and you're learning as you go. And I think that's, you know, what the importance about social learning really is, incorporating learning throughout your daily life, not just like, okay, I'm here to learn and then go do the work. And then, okay, we have another training and then now go do the work. I think for us, it's more so working and learning at the same time, and really, how do you say, I wouldn't say getting it checked all the time, because I know that's not always a available thing in the workplace, getting your work checked. But you know, having someone to help you out and assist you, and just, or, you know, and that kind of relates to what I said earlier about having on-demand training. Because, you know, going back to something when you're confused about anything really, and using that as a reference to fix your work, or, you know, better your learning in you know, throughout your employment really. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I had to share. It was more so on-demand training is my main point, and having it accessible and having someone there really to guide you along the way. And I know our generation sounds pretty needy, but I think we're pretty self-sufficient at the same time. So, but
All
yeah,
right, well, we'll open it up for questions, because I think we have some people who may have some questions for you.
for sure.
Jerome, do you want to start out?
Sure. Hey, how's it, Khalil? Thanks for sharing your
Yeah.
story. Very inspired that you made that jump to New York all on your own. So a question for you, having experienced learning in, you know, in your own generation, and then coming to the workforce, what were some of the things that you found frustrating, and how did you overcome, like, being able to learn with those frustrations, that because you might have been used to learning different ways?
Right. So I think I forget if it was in this main group or just in our breakout session. But one of the things, I think it was Haley actually, who was forcing us to ask questions. That's what the pandemic has kind of done. And I think for me, fortunately enough, I had a mother who forced me to ask questions all my life. But coming into the workplace, I think the pandemic made me feel more comfortable, because, you know, I think it made me feel like we are all in a similar field of like getting back and like getting comfortable again. And so it made me feel comfortable to ask questions about and get help about what I was, you know, learning about and what I was doing. And after that, it was pretty much just speaking up all the time and asking 50 million questions all the time. And eventually, I mean, they'll make a document, or they'll make they'll make something so that I stop asking questions really, but no, to really, you know, help not only me, but there are other people out there who have similar questions and just, you know, don't want to say anything. Yeah.
Jerome, do you have any follow-up questions to that, or you're good?
Oh, well, not necessarily a question. I think two of the things that came to mind as Kaleo was talking was, one, there was this environment where he felt safe enough to ask those kinds of questions. And two, the courage to ask questions, maybe because you're just brand new and you don't know any better.
I think that
You-
might be the thing too.
It could be that, but then even some people like they are kind of fearful, like, oh, should I ask that? Because they're worried about how will I be perceived by all these people I just joined this company. Versus I need my needs met, and that's much better.
And I think this is, thank you for bringing that up, because like I shared earlier, this is important as to why there should be on-demand, training and learning tools available, because people can, not, maybe they don't feel comfortable asking questions, right? And so they can just go somewhere and find something to, like, educate themselves and better themselves. And yeah, it's a good show, I guess, now.
All right, I'll turn it over to Cheryl. She has a question for you, Kaleo.
Sure.
Aloha, everyone, and hi, Kaleo. You have such beautiful spirit and energy, and what a great speaker you are. Thank you so much for being with us today and for what you've done for our Native Hawaiian population. All right. So when talking, when you were talking, it made me think of a couple of things, and I just kind of want you to gut check me, because I'm actually doing for a client that's in the DeFi space. And for the decentralized finance world, this is an anonymous space where people are connected through Discords. They have Ask Me Anything sessions, and it's really a very interesting population. At the same time, I'm also developing a project for neurodiversity in the workspace. What I see are two parallels, and I want you to give me your opinion on this. And maybe the other members of the crowd can do this too. I feel like what we were talking about with the greenhouse effect is very important. In the neurodivergent creation of this project, we learned that they need something called body doubling, and that's a horrible thing. It sounds very sci-fi, but it's like having an accountability circle. So what it feels like to me is, and I really do believe that your generation are the hunters and gatherers of information. We have to be careful as people who are advising our corporations or our clients to say you have to restrict them. I mean, this isn't a casino. We're not trying to keep them in so they spend all their money. We have to allow them to go out and find information and bring it back to that group. So when I say that, does that feel kind of congruous to what you're trying to teach us today? Because what I'm seeing is, you really want to know what the end result is, and then you will take the resources to go get it. Am I on track with that?
I wish I said that in my speech, because that was very clear. Yeah, that is exactly what I mean. I talked to a lot of my friends before coming here and tried to get their input as well. And it was kind of all the same thing, like having someone there or having learning there, and then we can go and sort of do things on our own. And when we make mistakes, we want to come back and just go in there, find out what we did wrong, find out what we need to fix, and then go back and do our thing. Yeah, more so than, I don't know what the opposite of that would be.
Thank you. I should give you a consultant fee. You just helped me so much.
No.
Thank you so much.
Kaleo will make his email available. Feel free to contact him. He's always willing to be contacted.
Definitely. Put in the chat.
Kaleo, we had a question that came up. How can we as talent developers help educate staff about generational preferences or differences, while also not planting or perpetuating stereotypes or potential perceptions of ageism or age discrimination? And it's a loaded one.
I'm sorry, can you please read that one more time?
Sure. So let's do the first half. So
Okay.
how can we as talent developers, or like our, in what we do for a living, help educate staff about generational preferences or differences? Like from your perspective, right? Because you come in, you're like, for example, your mom is a Gen Xer and you are a Gen Zer. And even at the workplace, that tended to be a challenge, right? Even when you're dealing with some of the other senior leaders that are at your workplace, how do you educate them on the generational preferences or differences when it comes to communication, learning, being able to execute things that they're being asked to do?
Shucks, that's a good one. I think one thing that our generation is very good at is, like Cheryl was mentioning, you know, we want to take in that information, right? And so we're really good at listening, I feel like, and watching and observing and sort of doing, and I think we also like to do things on our own. So it's like, I guess for me, in my experience, I watch, I observe how, you know, things are done currently, and then I go back and do my thing. And then when I come back, you know, I present it in a way and also share, you know, how I did it and like what things might have, should have, could have been different for me to do this even, you know, easier or better in a sense. Shucks, I wish I had more time to answer that one.
I want to take a different approach. So think about one of your friends who is not you and the way that she operates. Sorry, you know who I'm referring
I
to.
know who, yeah.
So she may not operate the way you do. So how would that happen?
I'm really trying to think on this one.
That's okay. That's okay. And it's not meant to be solved, you know, in one standpoint. One of the other things is like, you know, we're not trying to perpetuate like ageism or stereotypes. Do you feel sometimes people are like, oh, that's because you're a Gen Zer, you know, you operate that way?
Yeah, I think so. It definitely, I feel like our generation too, it's very like all men for themselves. And we kind of see everybody above us as like, you folks made the mistake in a way. And we're here to try and, you know, just do our thing and get by, I guess. Shucks.
That's a good response. Yeah. Don't feel like you have to answer the whole thing. Christy, what's your question?
I don't have a question, but I have something to kind of comment on about this topic, because we have a pretty wide gap of generations where I am. And I actually see a lot of the younger generation can't use technology as well as the older generation. So I don't actually think it's a generation type of thing. I think a lot of times it just happens to be their circumstances, how they grew up. Did they have a computer, right? Because we're servicing a lot of people that come from public housing and then low income. And so I see that a lot. And I also see where the younger generation really likes quick answers. So they don't want to self-service. I have a bunch of how-tos, but nobody wants to read them. They just want to know, how do I enter this in right now? Like, how do I do this right now? And they don't really care about doing it the next time or asking me again later. So even though being available for staff to ask me questions, I sometimes feel like that might be a disservice because it doesn't help them to problem solve and think, how am I going to do this the next time if Christy's not there?
That's very good observation.
Yeah, that's very true, Christy. And I've known Kaleo since he was a freshman. And so usually when he comes and asks me a question, I normally vomit on him. And he goes, whoa, okay, I'll get back to you. And then he comes back with this whole entire plan. I'm like, perfect, looks good, and then we kind of move forward. Again, I might be the unique situation, like where not everybody thinks the way I do, and we all think different, right? But going back to what Cheryl said, it's like that neural pathway of the way that your mind operates and the way that you function ties back to what Christy said, the way you're brought up, your economic status, what you had resources to. When it comes to social learning, what's so funny though, is that they want the quick fix. And the social learning aspect, a part of it is, can you just give it to me? So that's why they go to TikTok. Discord has like the meta universe. They go out into the meta universe now and they find their answers. Okay, thanks. And then they exit, they leave. Or they go into the meta universe and they create something else. So that way, if somebody else has the question, then it's there. Some do that, some don't. So it's very much affecting our world in training. We're no longer the traditional format. You can't do the workshop where the instructor stands out there and you teach. It now becomes more of a, well, what do you bring to the table? Can you share? What do you bring to the table? What do you share? How do we take that now, snippets and pieces, and then share it out with the rest of the world? Yeah. Kaleo, do you have any closing thoughts?
Good luck with Gen Z coming in the workplace. No. I think it'll be cool. I think the future has a lot in store for our generation coming up. And I think we're a lot of go-getters we have a lot of go-getters in our generation too, and self-starters. So that's, yeah, it's exciting. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, Cheryl, go ahead.
I have one last question for you, Kaleo, and maybe this isn't something you can answer, and maybe Cassie, we can bring this to another meeting, but you know, you've got a generation under you, Gen A.
Gen
We don't
A.
talk about Gen A. It's like somebody said to me, "What's that? Are we gonna have B soon?" I'm like, yes, as the population age, we'll start the alphabet all over again. Gen X, we started it. But my question to you is, because you are mentors, you are the information, you're the top of the food chain for Gen A, in terms of knowledge. So I'm curious how, you know, how those folks are approaching you, just like you go to, you know, Cassie, Auntie Cassie, who vomits on you. I love that. Who just gives you everything. How do you instruct them? Do you see any trends that we should be aware of as professionals? And if you want to take this offline because of time,
Oh, that's a good question.
I'll help you out here, Kaleo. So I'll interject real quick while Kaleo gathers his thoughts. I was doing an instructional training for my niece who is Gen A. And what's interesting is she said, well, my friends and I who are in the video game, we don't think that's the right answer. And I was like, wait, what? You guys are talking about homework in the video game? Well, this is the way we all connect, you know, and we're talking about it. So isn't there a different way to do it? And I was like, I don't know of another way. Maybe you can figure it out. She was okay, thanks. And then that was it. And then 3 weeks later, I asked her the question. I said, so do you guys solve it? She says, oh yeah. One of my other friends that we reached out to in the game told us like, this is the way you would do your homework and sent us the file. I was like, wait, what? That
you
was
talked about the
mind blown.
metaverse. Sorry
Yep.
to interrupt you, but yes, when you said the metaverse, that's immediately what I thought. My son does all of his socialization. He's Kaleo's age, but he does it all on, you know, Call of Duty. Sorry,
Yeah,
that's shareable.
Yeah. Yep. And especially like you know, I have a friend who works at Facebook at Meta, or they're called Meta now, and they're doing the Oculus and how they actually operate and do things. And that's our world. Like if we're ready for it or not, it's coming. But what's funny is Gen A's don't like to wear it. It's obstructing me. I don't like that. That's what they tell me. Yeah. But anyway, Kaleo, how would you like to respond to Cheryl's question?
Shucks, you know, I don't really have much experience talking with anyone actually, even from Generation A. Like seriously, my cousins are all, my family, everybody is like up on the Gen Z level, and everybody else, they're all really babies. But I think, you know, hearing what you folks shared, it's gonna be more so a thing of how do we, like, I don't know, we learn throughout our daily lives, like through what we do, and we want to learn throughout while doing the things we like to do versus separating the two, I think. I don't know.
To your point, everything's blended, yeah, in your world now. Nothing is separate. Like we grow up, we're like, okay, this is training. Okay, this is how you learn. Okay, this is your work. Now it's like all blended in, and sometimes it crosses over even into your personal life, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
less compartmentalization. Kaleo, I think you did a great answer by not answering it, because maybe there isn't an answer yet. So don't think that, you know, you're on the hook there. You did great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Kaleo. So I'm gonna do our last breakout before we go ahead and close the session. We have some let me share this first before I go there. All right. So our last breakout is really around the discussion about if we were to do social learning, you know, what would that look like? Like if you don't currently do it in your company, it's fine, you know. But if you want to try social learning, you know, what would that look like? And how would you do it? And you know, what are some of the blockers and challenges? You know, Dina shared a great opportunity of what they do for their greenhouse, one of the questions would be like, how can you make it better? What would be the changes? And then how do you overcome those things? Because that always tends to be the evolving process that you have to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the rooms again, and I'll put you in there for about 7 minutes, and then I'll actually do, I take that back. I'll do 5 minutes, and then we'll come back into a closing. All right. Thank you. Leave this for another discussion, that he has faced cultural adversities, and I will just share and I'll let him continue, but he is a male who went to Kamehameha schools, who's Hawaiian, Japanese, and African American. Cleo, would you like to share a little bit more?
Yeah, it is very interesting. I grew up my parents were separated. So I grew up in a Japanese Black household. My grandpa was super, West Virginia military his whole life, and grandma was Japanese straight from Japan. And on the other side, it was Hawaiian and white. And it was just a whole mix of cultures. And then going to a Hawaiian school, learning about Hawaiian, values and the gods and beliefs. And then growing up in a Christian household, and I'm also part of the LGBT community. And so that too is just like a whole, it's crazy. But what's awesome is that, the world is a lot more open now. And I'm glad that our generation is getting to a point where we can be in the positions to change the learning styles and change the mindsets and the ways of thinking. So yeah. Thank you for
That's a good segue, Kaleo. And I want to say, the minds of thinking, and we'll definitely leave that open for our next conversation. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Kaleo, for sharing your mana'o and your thoughts, and everyone here for also participating. Have a great day, everyone.
Mahalo.